The vastness, the remoteness, the free feeling out here. No cell phone service, and the goal is to get out here.
It's like a different world.
Her father founded this area.
This small town community stuff, everyone knows everyone.
Far out in these hills, historically it's also been weed operations.
And there's a difference between a criminal and an outlaw.
You guys holding on out here.
By a thread.
We all had to rely on one another with our lives at one point or another.
Hour and a half.
That's the closest real town. No trespassing. The sheriff doing his round. It was wild back in the day, and I think it still is.
There was a lot of freedom to live differently.
We were running from the cops. We were running from helicopters. It's really a significant part of what we dealt with here in the Emerald Triangle.
Beautiful, isn't it?
It's one of the most beautiful places in the world.
That's how I feel.
Good morning, guys. Today we have quite an adventure. We're going south from here into the Lost Coast, a part of California's coastline that's the least developed, least inhabited. Out there, from what I've been told, are people living by design away from society with very interesting stories and very beautiful landscapes. Let's do this. Coming up on the town of Ferndale. A lot of agriculture out here, and from what I've been told, this is the gateway town to the Lost Coast. And this is the last town of any size for the rest of today. The first and the last. How you doing? Do you guys live in Ferndale here?
Used to. It's a nice little town.
Yeah, what's going on out here?
Nothing.
That's about
Nothing.
Why'd you move?
Lady problems. There isn't time.
Hauling some of that stuff?
I'm okay, thank you though.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's a good little town. I spent 60 some years here and finally moved out, and I love coming back.
Different than a lot of California up here, fair to say?
I would say. Being Northern California, we're only 85 miles from the Oregon border. And we've kind of got our own mentality, separate from Southern California. They try to call San Francisco Northern California. Well, that's not even close.
Okay, so you guys look at yourself more like Southern Oregon than
Pretty
San
much.
Francisco or LA.
Absolutely. I don't even ID with San Francisco. It's like a different world. We put our names on these benches. We spend so much time here.
Oh, here's your name, Craig.
Yeah, exactly. 2 Donnas and a Lloyd and a Craig.
That one, Donna.
Yeah, I'm sitting on your.
You got your name on the chair.
Yes, we do.
I've been here for 5 minutes in Ferndale.
Oh,
What do you think? Tell me about it.
Awesome.
How is it?
how is Ferndale? I love Ferndale. I would live up here in a heartbeat.
Where do you live?
Santa Rosa. This is peaceful. People are friendly. We can sit out here all day long and visit with strangers and they talk to us. Oh no, this is a great place. If I was raising kids, I'd raise them here.
This is a gateway to the Lost Coast, fair to say?
Oh yeah.
It
He's
would be
been
an
there.
adventure. The road is terrible. You gotta
Yep.
go through Petrolia into Honeydew, go to the right,
Okay.
and that'll take you up some really wilderness country.
See you guys. Cool place. Beautiful architecture, some cool shops. One of the most beautiful small towns I've been to. It is so charming. They just don't make them like these anymore. All right, if any of you are from Ferndale out there watching this video, tell us about your town down below in the comments. We'd love to hear about it. Okay, we're leaving Petrolia, 30 miles. From my understanding, there are only unincorporated communities from here on out today. We're gonna really get out there and get a little bit of glimpse of the Pacific Ocean before we go to the interior of the Lost Coast. seen a lot of the world, but this is one of the most beautiful places I've seen to date. Just the vastness, the remoteness, the free feeling out here. So this is the one area, when you look at a map of California, you'll see Route 1 go up the coast of the whole state except for this one part, that being the Lost Coast. As you can see way off in the distance there, through the haze, cliffs go right down into the ocean. And so the reason they didn't build the one for this section was because it was just too rugged and hard to do. So the road went inland, and that's why the Lost Coast is called the Lost Coast, because it's hard to get to, super remote out here. As you can see, guys, not one car. We've passed 3 cars now at this point. It's just nothing but nature, rugged, extreme nature. Not far from here are the redwoods, some of the biggest trees in the world, and you can see throughout the years, storms have brought out these massive pieces of wood here, washed them up on shore, and created this beauty.
Stop by the Honeydew store. It's a pretty neat store there right in town. And you head over the Honeydew Bridge, you'll see some cool places too. Before you head
What's
out
at the store?
It's just a neat, like, it's just kind of a hangout spot. Like, when the pot was really big, a lot of people hung out there. You can get some good stories there, I'm sure.
Oh, cool. You guys setting up posts for a ranch out here?
Yeah.
What are the industries out here for the most part?
Ranching was the original industry, and then now the marijuana, and there's some logging still out here too.
The logging's still going? Okay. You live in Ferndale?
Yep.
What do you think about here?
I love it out here. I don't know, driving from Ferndale, it's like an hour here every day, so it's the perfect amount of time to come out to go to work. Just small town community stuff, you know. Everyone knows everyone, so. When we tell people NorCal, it's right at the Oregon border.
The guy in Ferndale was saying it feels more aligned with Southern Oregon than California.
Oh yeah, that's probably a good explanation, yeah.
Okay guys, another 20 minutes of driving in from the coast, and we're finally in Petrolia. Let's go check this out. This little guy. Here's the Petrolia General Store, and this is where you're shopping when you live out here. His name is Taco? Little Taco guards the store.
Yeah, he's like the mayor.
Yeah.
Taco's the mayor of town. Cash only, right?
Yep.
Okay.
We had a different dog, a German Shepherd. And one day I was walking down the cooler aisle, and on the bottom shelf, she went in the cooler with her and went in and forgot the dog. And it was laying at the door. Help me, help me.
Oh, with his face looking out by the cauliflower.
I'm still in here.
So why?
Dogs are spoiled.
Yours are? Why is the town called Petrolia? Was there oil found here or something?
There's a little plaque on the corner,
Okay.
and it has the little story. It's not good quality, and where we're at, it's not worth it. They've drilled a few times.
They drilled a
you.
few times, yeah.
Yep.
Do you love it out here?
Love it. Her
Peace.
and I have been out here over 40 years.
Oh,
I've been
wow.
53. It'll be 54 this year.
Wow.
Has it changed much or still the same?
A
It's
lot.
going back to what it used to be.
Yeah.
Going back?
Yeah.
How?
We don't have to pot growers,
So
Okay.
it went from timber to sheep, to
cattle,
cows, to weed, to
nothing for a little
Nothing.
while, and then it'll go back.
What's it now? I see a bunch of ranches cruising in.
yeah. There's a couple of ranches left.
So right now it's like the weed is cycling down and then something else will replace, or
We're hoping.
you're hoping?
Yeah.
Okay.
Something's got to replace it.
Are like people moving out of town now or something?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Lots. The weed isn't worth anything anymore. Everybody paid all the money to get legal, and now they can't sell the weed to make a profit.
So there's some, like you guys holding on out here.
By a thread.
By a thread.
Yep. Something's got to change.
Do you get tourists coming through here? Is that what, does that help?
That'll wane off in the winter.
Does that help at all?
A lot.
During the spring, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, cool, ladies. I'm going to go check that out.
Yeah?
Record it. Yeah.
Enjoy.
Thank you. Take care. California's first drilled oil wells. California's first drilled oil wells producing crude to be refined and sold commercially were located on the North Fork of the Mattole River, approximately 3 miles east of here. The Old Union Mattole Oil Company made its first shipment of oil from here on June 1865 to a San Francisco refinery. Many old wellheads remain today. Oh, that's interesting. All right, guys. I don't know if you can see that Mattole Road here on the maps. I just talked to a school teacher. Unfortunately, he didn't want to be on camera, but he said the big struggle is being so far from everything. And he said the kids are struggling out here, just like anywhere. And I said, well, doesn't it help being out in all of this countryside? Doesn't that make it a little easier on them? And he said, no, it's just economic issues. There are a lot of people just getting by right now, and that's causing issues, obviously, for raising kids. I mean, you're seeing what I see here. There aren't many jobs, and if that growing is not paying, then what replaces it? Mattole Grange, this is like community center, something like that.
Grange, yeah.
Mattole Grange, okay. I'm not even familiar with that term. Is that a Northern California
old
term?
brotherhood type of thing. It's almost like a fraternal club, but it's sort of a gathering of, like, it was for farmers, like,
okay,
to gather and like create community for,
okay,
and support the families around that farming village. So it's, yeah, it goes back to that, and there still is like an active national and state Grange hall. I mean, it's been going steady for 100 years.
Oh yeah, cool.
It's still active. It's just right now it's becoming a construction site, and then it'll get buttoned up, and everyone will come back up. We just had like a big dance stage.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Good community out here?
Yeah. Yeah, pretty
great.
amazing, actually, yeah. I spent like my 20s up here and just moved back recently, so.
How's it feel being back?
Pretty good. I mean, the valley's kind of emptying out a little bit.
That's what they said at the store.
At
the
the
petroleum store, yeah. They said it's going through a down cycle. Mm-hmm. People move in and...
Yeah, pot doesn't make financial sense for, or people have a hard time making financial sense of how they can be out here, because you can't just grow some weed, or because there was money in general in the weed world, and then everyone could do anything because it just greased the wheels. It just worked its way.
It trickled down through everything, huh?
Yeah, you could be a barber out here and people would have money to pay you, so you could...
Right.
You could still make it. Most granges have like bingo, like some nights, and pancake breakfasts.
Oh, nice. You get a lot of old people out here, a lot of young people, or what is it?
A lot of older people right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there is a good amount of, I would say there's like 150, 200 people active, and there's a lot of people kind of in the hills that hide.
In the hills that hide?
Yeah, just do their thing. So this is the dining hall.
Oh, cool. So this is active now. People come in here, eat.
Yeah, we usually have meetings in here. There's a mobile vet that's coming out to do stuff.
Mobile vet?
Yeah.
Because you don't have any of these services out here, huh?
Yeah.
Nothing.
No, and nobody, I mean, people go to town maybe once every 2 weeks or something like that.
What's town?
Eureka.
How far?
An hour and a half.
That's the closest real town.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta love that style of living then.
You have
to be out here.
Yeah, and it's just there's things that are just kind of hard, and there's things you just put away.
Like, what if you want a haircut? Where do you go?
I don't have anywhere.
You know.
People talk about, like, when they come from Eureka, they're like, "Oh, I would love to live out here," and they're like, "Okay, well," but then you would be here, and like, what would you do? And so a lot of people that have like computer jobs they could make money on computer jobs, they would make it out here. Or
because Starlink works out here, right?
yeah.
Do you have an internet connection? Because my phone doesn't work.
Yeah, there's internet to a lot of these different places.
Okay.
People have Starlink. Yeah, but it's kind of a little bit messy. The power goes out, and then you had no power, no internet for a couple of weeks last year. You just sort of sit in the dark. And
Tough place to be single, huh?
yeah, it really is. No money and no women. That's all right.
You can see through the trees here, all of the greenhouses, and it smells like weed, for sure. Even want to know how much this kombucha is out in these parts. It's gonna be like $5.19.
Plus tax, yeah.
I thought it would have been worse actually. Okay, so you were out here because of why, you said?
Because I was addicted to fentanyl.
Oh wow.
So I came out here to get sober, and I went through 4 centers in less than a year, and then I ended up here, and I've been here for over a year and a half.
There's a center out here for addiction?
Yeah, it's called Mountain of Mercy.
Faith-based? How is it so far?
It's awesome. I mean, it's completely donation-based, so we rely on God and donations.
I'll leave a donation.
Keep going.
If I left money with you, would you be able to deliver it there?
Absolutely.
As a donation?
Yeah, I live there, so.
Oh, cool.
I'm a counselor up there, so.
So it's working for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
How long have you been off fentanyl?
Since May 18th of 22.
Good for you.
Yeah, I've never lasted more than 2 months at one. So this one I've been here for
Why
a
do you
year
think this is more successful? A year and a half, you said, right? Why do you think it's more successful?
I think it's probably being up here. We have like a cross that overlooks the redwoods out at the edge of the mountain, and the people there, none of the staff get paid. So they're there to, like, willingly to help you, like they're volunteering their time to help you, and I think it just means more, knowing that they don't have to be there to help me, but they're choosing to be.
Okay.
So that's why when I graduated, I stayed on as staff. So.
You're staff now. Do you still struggle with the addiction, or are you over it?
I'm over it.
Wow, what do you have to say to those who are on fentanyl? What would your advice be?
It is one of the hardest things that you will ever do to get off, but it's worth it, and there's actually the other side of the road.
Life's gotten way better?
Absolutely, yeah.
Can you hold this?
Yeah.
I'm gonna get something for your organization. Because I do a lot of stories all over the country, and I'm running into the fentanyl story a lot. There's
Right.
no way around it.
No.
And if I can give to the organization, that's what I got.
Thank you.
It needs to be more of a nationwide discussion right now.
Yeah,
I feel.
absolutely.
Because a lot of people are struggling.
Yeah, I mean, my detoxes were rough. I had to relearn how to walk.
Really?
Yeah.
So you were super addicted?
Yeah, I had seizures, severe dehydration. I had to relearn how to walk. I was maybe 89 pounds at the end of it.
So when you're on fentanyl, do you have any consciousness of you're an addict and you're in it? Like, do you have that, or you're just totally in a different world, you don't even really know?
You're just looking for your next fix.
That's it.
That's it.
And do whatever it takes to get the
Yeah.
next fix.
Yeah, you rob, you steal, you lie, you cheat.
You'll steal from anyone.
Anyone.
Whatever.
Yeah.
It's like oxygen.
Yeah.
It's water.
Yeah, you can't live without it.
Okay. Are you looking for more people going
Yeah,
through
it's
your phone?
completely free to go through. Like,
Oh, you can go ahead of me, man.
I was gonna ask for a can of Copenhagen Snuff.
I can go get it.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank
Take
you.
care. All the best.
Thank you. Have a good
It's a
day.
great story. It's really cool. Guys, in these videos, I just show you what I come into, and I never know what I'm going to come into. And stories like that are super important because I've made videos in Kensington and all over American cities, and it's not just cities anymore, it's everywhere. And so when you see a success story, that's awesome. And anytime, I can shine a light on some optimism in the darkness with topics like that, then I feel like I'm doing good work. So you never know what you're gonna get with me because I never know what I'm gonna get into. That lady's story is cool, man.
She's mentioned something to me before. If you spend enough time up here, you'll meet a lot of people. that have been on it and have gotten better.
No way.
Oh yeah, this is Humboldt County. Like, I've been here my whole life.
No way.
Yeah, and it's very common that drug problems are very common.
You grew up on the Lost Coast?
I grew up in Eureka.
Okay, do you like it out here?
Yeah, I like being away from the city. Beautiful, isn't it?
It's one of the most beautiful places in the world.
That's how I feel.
What's your name?
Michael. Sorry, my hands are...
Fisties? Peter.
Peter?
Yep.
It's nice to meet you, Peter.
Yeah, you too, Michael. Take care, man. So as you can see here, no cell phone service. We started up here, Ferndale, cruised down. We're now in Honeydew. And now we're gonna get off the main road. And you can't even see a road here, little back roads. But going all the way down here to Whitethorn. And then the goal is to get out here by Sunset Shelter Cove. So I've had the camera off a lot. You know, a lot of these large sections I'm not rolling, so what is it? 1:20 started this morning at 9:30, I believe. So I gotta make some ground here and get all the way down here to Whitethorn and then out. Police out here. The sheriff doing his round. So all the properties here have big fences outside. Look at this one. Goes for quite some time. So I'm guessing, and I'm just speculating here, that these are weed grows on the other side. You can see all the planters. No trespassing. You have the wire fence and then the wooden fence. So the wire probably to keep the deer out and the wooden to keep the eyeballs out. And then there are all these little back roads here. And I am sure there's some interesting stuff far out in these. Oh, look at that. What was that? What is that, a car from the 30s? Overshot the corner. And, well, trees coming out of the wheel well. I'm sure it was wild back in the day, and I think it still is a bit wild out here. I mean, it's one of those places you can just do what you want. There is no one here to know. Looks like a bit more civilization than everywhere else we've been. Look at this cool building. That's awesome. Okay, I had my camera off, but that's so interesting. You guys were just telling me a bit of the origin story up here.
Yeah.
Or like the recent origin story, 60s, 70s, those time periods.
Yeah.
Well, that's what Tasha's talking about, how when we came here as Back to the Landers, one of our ideas was to steward the forest. And we had different ideas.
Oh, cool.
There were logging families
you.
and ranching families that lived here at the time. And for the most part, they were really pretty good to let these hippies come in and take land and so forth. But we had different views about extraction. And what's come down with the new, more modern, now that cannabis has kind of crashed a little bit, the restoration work is meeting, the loggers are working now with the restorationists.
Oh, okay.
You know, after years and years of a little bit butting heads over the issues. That is the new economy here.
What everybody recognizes here is that we're going to need a more diverse economy.
Okay.
Because I'm just going to go back a little bit further. I came here when I was 2 years old, and it was logging, and there was lots of mills, and that's how families made a living. And it wasn't a very good living. People barely eked a living by, but that's how people got by.
Okay.
Then all the mills shut down, and logging went away because the trees were just cut. All of them were cut, and that took 40 years for more trees to grow, right? So there's still some mills up north, but in Whitethorn, right here, there used to be 7 mills.
Okay.
Not right here, but 4 miles from here. then there was this period where my dad had to go away to make a living, to like build houses down in Muir Beach and stuff, to be a carpenter, when I say build houses, have someone hire him. But what his dream was to start this place and build a spec house out in Whale Gulch. He got some land really cheap, and he needed building materials. That's how this place started. He needed to buy building materials to build. And then people started coming, I think Jim was one of them, and said, I see you got a bunch of boards and nails in there. This was the first building.
Oh, this was right here.
And,
cool.
I need some building materials too. You know, how does this work? And he'd say, yeah, come by, see if I have what you want, or if I can include your stuff with an order. And that's how we started selling lumber out of here.
One question for those that don't know, back to the land movement, what exactly was that?
Okay, so you want to give it a shot?
The Back to the Land movement was a lot of, for lack of better terms, hippies that were looking for a different lifestyle than I grew up in Los Angeles in the early 60s. And then I moved to the mountains of Southern California in the mid 60s in order to just try to get out of the city. So
okay.
And then a friend of mine called me one day and he said, I just bought 40 acres in southern Humboldt County.
Okay.
And if you'll come build me a cabin, because I was a carpenter since I was really young, I'll give you a piece of that land. And so in 1969, I arrived here as part of that Back to the Land movement. And there were a few people that were taking the old ranches that had been logged over or for whatever other reason, and then kind of splitting them up, generally into 40-acre parcels. Her father, Bob McKee, was one of those people.
Okay.
He had family all over. His family founded this area, the Lost Coast.
His grandfather homesteaded here on this flat. But yeah, his vision was the 40 acres and a mule. He really believed in that dream. Which president was it? Lincoln, I think, that said if everybody could have 40 acres and a mule, that things would be really different, because that's the whole idea of small farms that are self-sustaining and contribute to the health of the economy and the environment. That's what he wanted to do. And people were coming up here, and there were groups of people, like somebody from Antioch College back east came and bought land in Whale Gulch and then told it their friends, and pretty soon there are 5 people from that had gone to that college that were all coming. So in the beginning it was all word of mouth, but it turned into a bigger movement of people looking at the industrial way that we live, cities, and how everything, not thinking that this was all going to work. This whole industrial model, capitalism, industrial capitalism, let's just call it, that was going to work.
A lot of us thought there was a collapse.
And they really thought that what to do was to move out to the country and make a life that was an alternative way, a different model.
That's interesting. So in your times, Vietnam time, a bit after, that movement took place, and I feel like there's a bit of that movement going on now also.
Yeah.
As I travel around the country.
Yeah.
A lot of people going back to nature. And homesteading.
It's never really quit here. I mean, here in Southern Oregon were some of the first people to really, this was really dropped out. Like I said, I'd spent a little time in the mountains of Southern California. And when I drove out to see my friend, and I drove to Garville, and I drove 10 miles to the Alder Point Road, and then 10 miles on a dirt road, and then 4 miles down to where the cabin was, I was like, wow, this place has dropped out. I mean, it's like out in the woods. Her father was quite the designer, and you're looking at some very serious architecture here, of which he milled all the wood himself. All the wood was milled on site. This young lady here is quite the carpenteress. When she was young, she helped build that think tank, what's called the think tank, which architecturally is a pretty interesting piece of work.
Love the door.
Love the door, yeah. All very talented craftsmen have always worked here. Like myself, Bob McKee would ask when you wanted to buy a piece of land, what do you do? Well, I'm a carpenter. Oh, I'll put you to work.
It's got some Gaudi influence, maybe?
Yeah, exactly. He was very influenced by Gaudi and Frank Lloyd Wright, the Craftsman movement, but Art Nouveau.
That door is Art Nouveau.
Yeah.
One of the stories about Bob is, though, that he only took one vacation in his part of 50 years, and he ended up in Barcelona, Spain. So when he came back, we all were set to do some of the work.
It's an interesting fusion.
Yeah.
It's got like some Hobbit elements
it does.
infused in here.
Yeah.
Well, let's go through the gallery.
Okay.
Let's walk.
And my mom did stained glass windows.
Oh, this is awesome.
Yeah, so this is our gallery, which was originally Bob's old wood shop. and was a wood shop for 50 years. And Bob passed away a couple years ago, and we decided to kind of honor him by making a lot of wood products that he inspired. And
You guys make this stuff?
yeah, we make this.
Oh, this is beautiful.
Yeah. So
Wow.
He championed our native hardwoods. This is chinkapin
these are all woods from the local
and walnut.
area.
Yeah, these.
And part of this back to the land movement came when Bob realized that, people are moving out into the forest and they have trees and they want to build a cabin and they want to cut a few trees down, and let's use those trees. Let's bring that wood in here and make local wood products. And so a lot of this is from that kind of a movement.
This is beautiful. So who's making this now?
We make it right here in the shop.
You two?
No, not me. Jim and
Yeah.
his team over there.
Jim and the team?
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Do you sell all over, or people have to come here and pick it up?
We're just mostly, they have to come here to get it. We're trying to expand a little bit, and we've just developed a website. We're a little slow. We're kind of
Okay.
So they,
Well, I'll promote your work. I'll leave the website in the description
Right,
here.
yeah.
Let's go back to the,
Yeah.
back to here. If you got a minute, we'll go back to the back.
Yeah, let's do it. What a find. Oh, this is so cool. It's like a cozy mid-century mod piece,
yeah.
right?
I like that description.
Oh, wow. It's got just like the Hobbit element to it,
I like
right?
that,
That's
yeah.
the Lost Coast feel in that.
Yeah.
This is built by a young woman, Brooke.
Builder, maker that.
Brooke, I would love this. Brooke's talented. What's the price on something like that, if you don't mind me asking?
Whatever it says, they're $2,700.
Okay. Way better than going to Crate and Barrel.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the real deal.
It's the real deal. Solid wood. So you really just get connected with the wood elements of this place, for lack of better words. Like all the deep forest, the old growth is in the veins, right? Where the moisture comes in the summer. Mm-hmm. That fog keeps the growth going because there's no rain in the summer.
Yeah.
And then the winter, the big rains come.
True.
And you get stuff like this here.
Yeah, and the hardwoods in this area are extraordinary. As you drove through your forest coming over here, you just saw it's just, millions of trees.
Beautiful.
Some of the most rare trees is kind of the yew wood. This is Northern California yew, very special wood, extremely hard, but a soft wood.
Oh, wow.
So there's some pepperwood, or if you're in the Bay Area, they might call it Bay Laurel. If you're in Oregon, they call it Myrtlewood, but here it's pepperwood.
I mean, you just don't see this in many places now, just the big slab.
Yeah.
Like usually it's sectioned off.
Yeah, if you have a couple more minutes, we would run over to and show you.
Okay.
If you want to see something.
Let's do it. Let's
look at this one too, though, before you
Okay,
This
yeah.
is a live edge.
I've never got so excited about tables.
Nice. This is live edge birch.
Oh, that
And
is...
they left this bark on there because it's so cool.
Yeah.
We have a Saturday farmers market here. This is really a community gathering place. We make the grounds available.
Community events. You got a cafe out there.
Yeah.
Quite possibly the coolest lumberyard business ever. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we have a hair cutting studio over there. And then the winery's over there. And on the other end of the campus, there's a dispensary.
This is all your guys' operation?
Yeah. Well, we rent to people.
Oh, you rent to people. Okay, so these...
so rent to the cafe, rent to this hair studio.
Okay.
I pay rent for my winery.
This is all part of it, though.
But this is the hardwoods and the hardware store are the core of the business.
So you see how wood's been stored sometimes for up to 15 years or more.
You store it for 15 years to air dry?
Yeah.
Takes that long?
Well, some of it's quite heavy, thick, so it takes a lot of years for a thicker piece.
Really? So you cut this out of the forest, and you can't sell it right away. It's almost like a wine. You just have to let it age for a while.
Well, most time, like 4 years is probably enough, but we just have the luxury of.
Well, 4 years would dry a thinner piece of wood.
Okay.
Yeah, like this, that would dry in 4 years.
Okay.
But, bigger pieces take a long time to dry.
Is this
There's a piece of old redwood there, look at that one.
Old redwood?
Yeah.
What would a piece like this retail for if someone wanted to come in and buy this?
Couple thousand.
Couple thousand.
For that particular piece, that's really rare because of the what's called the curly aspect to it.
Sort of the waviness.
This business right here is a really good example of what people are trying to do in this economy where we can barely eke by with just keeping it small, like we only have 2 people working here, but trying to build a name for it, build a market for value-added products from wood that we grow right here from our own landscape, and so we can take better care of the forest and thin the trees and mill them and then get the wood in people's homes where they can have that beauty and that appreciation of the forest for greater appreciation of forest for everybody, kind of like teaching through the love of wood and helping the economy.
Got my usual piece of wood.
Oh, this is cool.
That's one board.
That's one board.
It's redwood, yeah. But one, it's just one.
So you're really hoping that you can create some jobs here.
Yeah.
But you're hoping it grows.
We're hoping that it grows. I mean, we don't want it to be 10 times bigger, but we need to be about, I would say we need to have 4 or 5 people working up here.
Yeah.
To make this really make sense with all the wood we have and the equipment we have and everything. And then that would give more jobs for local people.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the models for.
Do you worry about if too many people got into this, then you're just going to have to cut down a lot more trees, right?
No, there's actually, we actually need a lot more people making things out of the trees because there's actually too many trees. It's not healthy for the forest.
Are they on the ground, or you mean you need to cut them down?
They need to be thinned.
Okay, for
So
fire risk.
Yeah, so nowadays we have like 500, to give you an idea, 500 trees per acre, and we need to get it down to more like 200 trees per acre. That's removing 300 trees per acre. And nowadays, for hardwood, you basically just have to cut them down and let them rot because there's not a market for them.
Why do you think the state is so bad with thinning forests? For example, in Arizona, they're really proactive with this.
They're coming along. They're just
coming along. Okay.
They're coming along. There's going to be funding for that. But if you go to CAL FIRE workforce development grants, they'll say that this is all too small scale, making this value-added products out of hardwood. They want to reduce biomass. They want to get a bunch of that wood down off out of the forest, and this is too small of a bite. And so it's just crazy. They don't get it that you need, yes, you do need some of those larger scale projects, but for sustainability and for teaching the craft for future generations, for the future, you need this. And so a lot of times you have to educate the funders and the agencies and all these people.
Jim, are you a tester for Apple? If it survives Jim's wood shop, it's good to go?
That's right. That's correct. It's not likely to survive. That's been my business for 55 years, is building this back to the land movement people's structures. And some of them were business people that came here. Others were just, low-income people that came here just to scratch out the farming and so forth. But this is where some of the design work goes on for the furniture and so forth. Here you go. Here's a good little saying for you. There's no Wi-Fi in the Redwoods, but there's a better connection.
So for those that don't know the Lost Coast, which is pretty much everyone, what is so special or unique about out here?
Well, because of the geology and the uplift and the difficulty to make roads, this was always wilder out here. When we moved out here, there was just a dirt road from town and maybe just a couple cars coming out every day. And if you wanted to build a house and you went to the building department and said, hey, I want to build a house out in Whitethorn, they would say, well, you don't need a permit out there, just go ahead. And so there was a lot of freedom to live differently. And now that's changed, where the county is going back and enforcing on all the land that they encouraged people to do different things on back in the early days.
But it took
it took 40 years or something. So there was a lot of knowledge, I'm going to say, that was gained through this kind of ability to experiment and be able to be more free.
Do you miss that a bit?
Oh, yeah. And I'm going to really speak for myself, but on behalf of a lot of other people, because I work in restoration. And it's really hard to do restoration projects that are needed for the environment because of the level of regulation at the county and state level primarily.
Why do you think it's gotten
so
worse
difficult? And worse and worse and worse. to where sometimes it's like a Chinese puzzle to try to figure out how you're going to get through the permitting. And it's not that we're trying to get away with something. We're trying to do something that's good. I think it's very interesting. I think there's this whole academic regulatory environment where people go to school and they learn to be good regulators. And they think that somehow by upping the bar, like they don't understand that what's good for the environment is more common sense, and there does need to be guidelines and all that stuff, but you don't want to regulate it to the point where people can't even afford to fix something, which is what it's come to.
Yeah, you need the regulations. Let's say an analogy would be for sports on the football field. You need the refs. Yeah. But if it's all refs on the field, you can't play the game.
Exactly.
I heard that recently. That was a good one.
That's a really good one. Anyway, I just had a meeting with our engineer today about these ponds we want to build, and it's crazy how difficult it is. And there's all these, what they call cutting the green tape pathways that California's done to try to make it better. And it's actually made it worse because not enough people like proofread all the changes to make sure it made sense with what the projects are that we're needing to do. So here you are trying to help the fish, and you feel like you need to just go get some private money and try to do it that way and not have any permits because the permits are getting in the way of the project.
In Southern Humboldt, don't you think that the whole cannabis industry that was underground for so many years, and then it began to surface, and then the agencies all kind of wanted their piece of it. And so they figured out all these regulations and rules, and then it all fell onto the restorationists.
Yeah.
You know.
Now we have to go through the same.
And for good reason, there was a lot of, cannabis farmers that were out of line, came here just for the gold rush thing. But the mom and pop cannabis people, they were back down to the earth people. And like even her son has a farm. He has actually right out here, there's a farm. They grow flowers, they grow cannabis there. And they're like some of the most amazing farmers. They make their own soil, they make their own fertilizer. They're on the cutting edge of the new growth. And they learned it from a lot of these mom and pop growers that came down through the years, really doing it right. But then there was the characters that came in and tried to kill it and then use, terrible stuff and pollutants.
They were just here for the gold rush, didn't care about the land or the area community.
And it fell down a little bit on the restorations because then the regulations about water use and every other thing got kind of out of hand.
All right, so Jim has a friend named John who is still growing. So we're gonna get out to his farm here and get the intel from the source. It's the thread that's hung through the story today, from the beginning until now. The big economy here. In the right place. Cool if I record?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. John, had an awesome road trip today, all the way from the north side of the Lost Coast down to here. And I noticed all of these operations with the greenhouses. Some were in operation, some look to be out of operation. That was the big economy, right? At the general store, they told me things aren't like they used to be.
The Honeydew General Store?
It wasn't Honeydew, it was Petroleum.
Petroleum,
yeah.
Oh, even better. Yeah, I don't know if that store has changed much, but Garberville and Redway, which are really the epicenter of the Humboldt County, or at least southern Humboldt, has really felt a dramatic downturn, with the market taking a downturn also.
So that's from the legalization in 2016, or what is it from?
Yeah, basically it's taken only 8 years to close half to 3/4 of the doors in Garberville.
Whoa.
That is from 2 or 3 decades ago, the price being $5,500 a pound, to now the price being $300 a pound. And that shows what a big part and a big role that we played in supporting the economy here in Humboldt County. We all had to rely on one another with our lives at one point or another, and that built a family-based community. People that come here from other parts of the world, that's what they talk about. They talk about this community and how friendly people are.
Okay, so the hill's way out there, which is super remote. The pressure is going on the small farmers right now.
Yeah, corporate, big invested agriculture can weather the storm, but the small farmers like myself, I'm 5,000 square foot canopy and one of the smallest in the state of California. And then you have companies like Glass House that's 2.2 million square feet. And they have all the labor they need. They have everything automated. So their price point per pound is a lot less than what we're doing here in the hills. And we're being scrutinized a lot more than any other company, especially down there in the flatlands, because we're surrounded by sensitive watersheds. And they can now drive that price point down to far less than we could even produce a pound of pop. So I don't want to be doom and gloom, because I believe this is like a puzzle sitting on the table, and we can find a way to put the pieces to the puzzle together. And we're seeing a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, per se, with growing our unique genetics. Strains like whitethorn rose and mom's weed, and strains that I've been growing or I've created here on the farm, and I've been growing for decades and decades that nobody else in the world has. So kind of emulating, grapes with having a certain varietal that nobody else in the world has, grown in a certain terroir, is the form we're going to have to take.
So you can go for the high-end stuff. Like, it's the difference of getting an artesian hamburger with locally grown meat, raised meat, right?
Yeah.
Versus McDonald's.
Versus
Fair
McDonald's that telling you that I'm the same as that locally grown meat. Even as of yesterday, some people had to come here. They wanted to come here, even though there's no plants and there's no flowers. They've just heard the stories of this place. From hiding what we've been doing for the last 40 years to now be able to share it with the world is really what brings us happiness. Rose, my partner, usually has a gong up here. And when we are taking tours, like the Gangier programs takes 20 people here every month. We do a little sound bath here. We take them down here and we tell them stories. But then what I get to share with them is story of other farmers. And I created this thing called Farmers Mountain. And it's a hillside with farmers logos from the Emerald Triangle. These are all just small farmers that were growing illegally for decades and decades. And when California decided to go legal, they had to weigh out whether or not they could afford to bring their farms into compliance, and if they wanted to participate like that. And did you believe the government was going to make a viable pathway forward for us, or was it going to be corporate cannabis that took over just like alcohol did?
Okay, so they didn't make it easy on you guys?
It definitely hasn't been easy. Some farms still, after 5, 6, 7 years, are still not permitted because, you're dealing with the water board, you're dealing with Fish and Wildlife, you're dealing with the counties, you're dealing with the cities and the counties, you're dealing with the state of California, and all those have different requirements and all those have different fees. So even a farm like this that's relatively close to the main road, still could have cost me nearly $200,000 just to bring one of the smallest farms in the state of California into compliance.
Wow. So before 2016, you guys just stayed low and sort of undercover and secretive about everything you did?
Yeah.
How'd that work? How was that?
It was interesting growing up as a kid, growing cannabis as a means of our income. It was always a part of our income. We also commercial fished. We also were part-time loggers. But cannabis for 4.5 decades was a source of our income to be able to live in the country. None of us were really trying to get rich, but we were trying to live away from the cities and away from the concrete jungle and create a lifestyle of our own in the way we wanted to.
So say the year is 2013. You're growing out here. What's that like?
2013 is 9 years after I had done 10 years in federal prison for growing cannabis.
10 years in federal prison.
Yeah, when I was 24, my best friend and I had gotten in trouble. An old man down our road turned us in. And we were pretty naive as hill kids and didn't know if there was a difference between state and federal laws, right? And we always thought if you got in trouble for growing this plant, that you would just get probation, your first time offense, right? I never had a speeding ticket. I would never hurt anybody. And federal laws are completely different. And even as a first time nonviolent offender, when I had 30 federal agents drive up my driveway, I was looking at a mandatory minimum of 10 years to life in prison. And, you know, I really was in disbelief for quite a while. Like, this was a reality. I thought this was like more of a scare tactic. And I was quickly educated by my lawyers and by the prosecutor that this was a reality, and nothing was to say I would get 10 years, but there was a chance I could get life in prison. No, yeah, I know it's impossible, but I didn't think it was possible for me to go to jail for 10 years for a plant. And when the judge was about to sentence us, he stood up and he said, I would like nothing more to do than to give you less time, but because I'm bound by the law, I have to follow the mandatory minimums, and that was a 10-year sentence, which was 120 months. In federal prison, you do 85% of your time. So I did 8 out of the 10 years, 6 years in Lompoc, and then 2 years in Nellis Air Force Base. Now I became the 4th existing farm in Humboldt County to get a permit, and I'm permitted by the state of California for exactly what I did a 10-year federal prison sentence for. It's pretty ironic. And I'm not bitter about it because, you know, we all have bumps in the roads and we all go on these journeys, and it's an experience that a lot of people haven't had before. So I think what's important for people to understand is once you're in jail, you can adapt and you get used to it. It's those family and those children that are left outside that love you that really suffer the most.
What was that day like? Were you on this property or you were somewhere else?
When they rolled up?
Yeah.
It was 6 o'clock in the morning. I had just had my first cup of coffee, and I was walking out my sliding glass door, and I was met by a guy in camouflage in a 9mm pistol that he put it up to my head. And it was weird because after they searched the place for 8 hours, they left and they gave me a little yellow speeding ticket, and they said, if we want to talk to you, we'll come back. And it was a year and a half later before they came back with an arrest warrant. And then I was charged with cultivation of marijuana and went to court for 3 years and pled my case. I wanted the judge to know who we were because I just didn't believe we could get that much time. And all they were interested in was that I told all my best friends and gave a bunch of people up. I could have got no time if I would have ratted them out. But that's not how we were growing up. And these people, like I said before, these are my family. And so... you know, I was who I said I was, and I did my time for the crime. And when I came out and I drove back up the driveway with my dad, I had 50 people from this community here waiting for me to help me get my life back in order, you know, bring me silverware and plates and everything that had gotten stolen that we take for granted, I needed. And they were there to bring that back to me.
What was that day like when you left the free world and went off to prison? Do you remember that moment, what that felt like? Or
yeah, I went. My mom and my dad both went with me. We drove down to we drove down to Lompoc, and where you check in, even if you're going to a camp, they bring you to the USP, which is the United States Penitentiary. That's where people get life in prison for murdering people, and they put you in a holding facility in there, especially if you check in on a Friday. And so I checked in on a Friday because that was my day. And so I spent 3 days over at the USP. And when I walked into the holding facility, there was like 9 other people in that holding cell. And they couldn't believe that for growing a plant that I had gotten 10 years. And I had the longest prison sentence at the Lompoc prison camp when I checked in. We built a pretty good relationship with the guard that watched us and the warden of the prison camp at Lompoc. And when we got out, and then when we got off probation, they emailed me and they wanted to come up. And so one weekend they drove up here from Lompoc, and they spent 3 days up here, spent the whole time on the farm, and hung out with me and my co-defendant, who's my best friend, who's my neighbor. And they were here really to make sure that we were okay, right? They understood that the system that they were in charge of regulating was broken. And at the end of the trip, they said, hey, well, it's legal in California. They each took 6 plants home from our genetics to grow in their personal gardens. And they still call me every single year at the beginning of the year, what are we growing this year? So it was a friendship and it was an understanding, and I understand and I forgave them because they were doing their job, and I'm not angry at them. I'm not angry at the judge. I deserved to get in trouble. I was breaking the law, and I knew I was breaking the law. We could all argue that maybe I didn't deserve to get that much time, but that's not benefiting anybody now. And what I'm doing now and sharing our story is what's really important. Prison was really weird, especially for a first-time offender. It was a big deal to find a cold toilet seat, right? In the morning, you always looked for the cold toilet seat because you knew nobody sat on that prior to you. That was a big deal. Little things like that. Sunday, chicken day was a big deal because the food was terrible. And I'm just telling you the reality of how it was in there.
How about relationships? You meet anyone interesting? Did you make friends, or was it just you're on your toes all the time, so on guard?
It wasn't like that at the prison camp. You know, there was hardly any fights because that's where they put non-violent offenders, and if you got in a fight, they would put you in a higher facility. So, but what was interesting is there was 2 big dorm rooms, and inside the dorm room there was bunk beds, and I was matched up with a guy that had 3.5 years prison sentence. His name was Charlie Knapp. Charlie Knapp, who was my bunkie, was co-defendants with Michael Melkin, who was part of a $2.2 billion savings and loan scam in the 80s. And they had embezzled and ripped off hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. Michael Melkin had ratted on Charlie, my bunkie, and my bunkie got 3.5 years for bringing so much harm to that many people. And there was still $800 million missing when they got sentenced. So he was a really nice guy. I was in there with a lot of really nice people. Bruce McNall, who owned the Sacramento Kings. Goldie Hawn came to visit. I mean, these were the elite of the criminal enterprise. These were the white-collar criminals. And day one of walking to jail, I had over maybe 20 people come up to me and they wanted my PSI report. And a PSI report is your pre-sentencing report that is from the court system that tells other inmates whether or not you ratted on somebody else. And if my pre-sentencing report wasn't clean and didn't say that I didn't rat on somebody, it would have been a lot harder time for me. But because of that, every different ethnic group really just embraced me and was just proud that, you know, this white, clean guy out of the hills held his mud. And it really allowed me to just be, they wanted to help.
So there's a real deep culture of respect in there? Respect and honor?
It's all about respect. I mean, growing up, I learned how to grow when I was 10 from my mom. By the time I was 15, I had begged and asked her to give me my own 10 plants because I wanted to grow the way I wanted to grow. I fell in love with growing plants, and I was growing with my best friends at the age of 15. We were running from the cops. We were running from helicopters. It became a cat and mouse game.
It was pretty exciting.
It was so exciting. I mean, like my best friend said, stop saying you were a criminal. You weren't a criminal. You were an outlaw. And there's a difference between a criminal and an outlaw. And we just didn't believe that there was something so bad about this plant that we just didn't understand why they didn't want us growing it. And we were growing in trees. We were growing underneath bushes.
In trees?
We would build platform in trees because when the helicopters and the aerial surveillance would fly over, they would be looking on the ground. So if we put a plant in a tree, most of the time they would just fly by and not see it. And when a plant is worth $5,500 a pound and maybe you get 3 pounds off of that plant, it's worth climbing that tree for $15,000. So you have 10 plants in a tree, you're 20 years old, maybe you make $100,000 tax-free. I mean, I could fish, surf, do whatever I wanted the whole summer or the whole winter. So,
do the cartels still operate in these areas or not really?
They've kind of moved on. They came here. I say that, but there's some around, and maybe they figured out a niche on how to make it work. You know, a lot of them also got their farms permitted. They kind of migrated to Oregon, then over to Oklahoma as new states came online and were really naive to how to make the system work. They really took advantage of those newer systems, and
they're good entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. Smart as heck. I mean, they're sharp and they're hard workers.
You get a lot of foreigners here doing this work too, right?
You used to go through the streets of Garberville and there'd be 50, 60, 70 foreigners sitting there wanting to work. And now you could drive through, there's nobody. There's no work.
But it wasn't just south of the border. It was like Eastern Europeans and everyone, right?
Everywhere, all over the world, and they look forward to coming here because we could afford to pay them, $20 an hour, and they could come here and trim for us and make a pile of money and then go back to their countries and live the rest of the year.
What's with the names here?
One thing that did happen when I was in prison, I heard my name come over the loudspeaker and said, "John, could you please report to the chapel's office?" And that's never really a good sign. And when I got there, the chaplain informed me that my mom had had a boating accident and she had passed away while I was in jail. And so, because she was the one that taught me everything that I knew, I thought it was really important, and in her honor, I really wanted to honor those people in my life that made it possible for me to be here. So Katie's my stepmom, Mary's another stepmother, and this is my mom, and my dad's on the other side. And these are just people in my life and Rose's life that really are responsible for the reason why we're doing what we're doing.
Oh, thank you. I don't smoke, but I'll give this to someone. Is that
share
cool?
that with somebody, yeah, for sure. And
okay.
I put the no helicopter on the top of the jar because it's really a significant part of what we dealt with here in the Emerald Triangle, running from helicopters, guys hanging out 100 feet over that telephone pole, 4 guys with AR-15s, and we're still talking about a plant.
So in California, I can drive around with this fine, give it to someone, no issues legally?
No.
Nothing.
No, you're good.
Wow.
I know, right? What a trip.
You went to prison for this.
Yeah. So,
wow.
And yeah, unfortunately, I won't complain about having gone to prison for cannabis, because there's people in jail for cannabis right now.
That's wild to me.
That is. Could you imagine sitting in prison?
Yeah.
And now we have all this legal.
You're giving it to me, and
yeah,
people are smoking legally. Yeah, that's rough. Guys, Shelter Cove, roughly 800 people live out here. It was started as a community, a subdivided community, initially planned for 4,000 people, with an airport, golf course, big dreams. But the story went down a little bit differently. Turns out a lot of the lots up there on the hillside couldn't be built on. The California Coastal Commission restricted a lot of the development, so a lot of the lots are for sale. You can see on Zillow, they're very cheap. I think I was seeing like $60,000, $70,000, but those are ones you can't build on. And in 1972, a plane came in here, and then when it was leaving with a bunch of prospective buyers going back to San Diego, I believe it was San Diego, it crashed. And that put a bad feel about the place, I guess. But it never really took off from my understanding. 800 people living out here. I'm sure there's some second homes. And if you have an airplane and want to fly in, wow, how cool that is. There it goes, guys. The sun's setting into the Pacific. What an epic journey today. We started way north of those mountains there. Part of the coastline they never attempted to make the road along. Hence, the Lost Coast being a super remote part of California, a place, well, most of us knew nothing about. Powerful, beautiful, bit mysterious. Really, really special journey today. Thanks for coming along on that. That was awesome. Until the next one.